music and dancing were banned. So they banned all music, all dancing. Yeah. The poor, unfortunately affected by the plague, didn't notice the change in policy and carried on dancing on their crippled, bloody feet. So now their feet are bloody and crippled, and they're still dancing with no music.
Yeah.
So tonight we are going to go over, we have a main topic. I call it Caps Conversations. If you're just now joining the show, I do put out these by themselves as regular videos, so you can share them out with your friends without sharing the whole stream. But the dancing plague of 1518, a time to dance, a time to die. Now, I did send you some articles to kind of read up on prior. I don't know if you knew about this beforehand or not, but it's pretty wild. And it's the one plague like most people don't really know about or talk about in the history of our world. They always worry about the Black Death or the one that just happened. So in the summer of 1518, a woman emerged from her house in a French town of Strasbourg and started dancing. I guess that's pretty normal, right? Within a week, hundreds had joined her. They danced all day and night. Seemingly obvious to the fact that they were dancing their skin off their feet, many danced until they collapsed. Some even died. That's pretty wild. Like, what would you do right nowadays if you just saw your neighbors just... Would you think they were on meth?
And she started dancing, and for a week she danced. She would sleep occasionally too, but there was never music. So whatever music, banger was in her head, it was only in her head.
Yeah. And what's interesting, this wasn't the only time that this happened in the world. So in 1518, the dancing plague of Strasbourg was just one of the many outbreaks that occurred throughout Europe from the 7th to the 17th century. That's a long stretch, right, of time to have this weird illness. One of the earliest known cases occurred in a French town of Berberg in 1020s on Christmas Eve. And another one happened in 1237. There was another outbreak in a German town. A large group of children took it upon themselves to leap and dance the 20 miles to a nearby town. Many believe this was the origin of the Pied Piper. You know the Pied Piper story, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It could be.
Yeah, I've heard a different version of that one, though.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, this is... it's all along the Rhine River. So these all outbreaks were like near the Rhine River, and they all shared a faith in the saint. I think you had mentioned that earlier, but and that it was maybe connected to that, but it's also been rumored that maybe it was ergot poisoning, but that doesn't make any sense. And all of it together, if you look at it, also, it's a hard thing to, when you hear people talking about it in the histories of how you couldn't even restrain these people, that part I don't get. Like, what do you mean you can't restrain them?
Right. Yeah. They continued on, like you said, through the 13th century, most notably in 1278, where the dancing antics was up to 200 people on the bridge, one of the bridge over the River Meuse. This one collapsed. There were some casualties there. The 14th century saw outbreaks of dancing mania. By far the biggest been the Germantown in 1374. That spread like wildfire across the country, reaching as far as Italy and Luxembourg. So like you said, there was all on the same river, right?
Yeah.
Maybe other streams off of that. So there must have been something in the water, you think, that was causing all this? No?
I don't know what could possibly cause this. It had to be, I think, probably psychosomatic, but it is regional, and it could be tied to that faith. And they went to a pilgrimage eventually what's the saint? Sorry, Saint Vitalis or something like that.
Vitus, yeah, I think it's Vitalis or Vitus. Either way, yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they went to a shrine and begged for forgiveness, and I guess with a saint that they would make you dance if you were sinning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're gonna mention that. That's gonna be mentioned here shortly. But a lot of people were doing this. A lot of different towns in this area of Europe were just dancing literally their life away. However, the plague of 1518 was one of the biggest outbreaks ever recorded. and has caused a debate for centuries, like we're doing today. The mania took hold. The leaders of Strasbourg turned the city's doctors for a cause of the outbreak. Now, this time there was no real medicine. It was very bloodletting, leeches, kind of that sort of thing, carrying around a lucky rabbit's foot to like ward away evil um, diseases at that time. And they were thinking they were overheated, like their brains were they're hot-blooded, their blood there was boiling, and it was a hot summer that year. So they were saying maybe their brains were boiling in their heads. I don't think I've ever danced when it's hot.
And it's so specific, like that you would all start dancing because your brain is boiling. Like, why wouldn't I can see you doing other stuff. I've heard it that and Jay's got some facts in the chat here, but
he does, yes.
But also, like, I've heard it. People thought maybe it was epilepsy. I've heard people think it's an allegory, that it didn't actually happen. Like that it was a protest of some kind as well, because they were at that time, I guess they were shutting down things like brothels.
Yeah, Jay says autoimmune disease triggered by strep. We've got some of those. He mentions that. But here's the wild thing. When this was all happening, after accepting the diagnosis with question, the town's leaders decided the best way to maybe end the plague was to keep them dancing. So they encouraged more of it. Presumably the people affected could dance off excessive heat inside their heads, they thought. To encourage this, the dancers were corralled into an area of a city center, kind of the center of town, or a stage. And they just let the pipers and the drummers, they were just told them to keep playing music and keep them dancing. And there were bigger men that were hired to kind of help them stay up. And the dancers who dropped to the floor, they're furiously heating their brains and kind of boil away. Either they passed away or they just exhaustion, I guess. So,
but isn't that super sus that like you send big dudes to make them keep dancing? And couldn't the big dudes just take them and stop them from dancing? Like they could maybe
their feet would just, even though they're holding them.
Maybe, but I think it could be a thing where like maybe you're sick of your wife, and maybe you want an upgrade or whatever, try something new. That maybe, hey, let's go to this dance hall, and then all the big guys make them dance until it's too late. And there were no divorces, so I don't know. Maybe
very, very strange. Surprisingly enough, though, that approach of keeping them dancing didn't work. With the dancers showing no signs of stopping, the city leaders arrived at the conclusion they had made a mistake. Well, no duh. Turning the center into an open-air dance hall, they decided the plague was in fact caused by the wrath of God. Bearing that in mind, a new approach was required. In a poor radical about face, music and dancing were banned. So they banned all music, all dancing. The poor, unfortunately affected by the plague, didn't notice the change in policy and carried on dancing on their crippled, bloody feet. So now their feet are bloody and crippled, and they're still dancing with no music.
Yeah, this could be in Saltburn.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting.
It's a tough one to buy into, like that it's and because of the way they frame a lot of it, it does sound like, it's something you could probably stop if you really wanted to, because, people back then weren't stupid. They just had different knowledge than we do, but they could understand how, well, if I want someone to stop dancing, here's how I would do it.
Yeah. No, I would agree.
Do that. They don't do that.
No. And then Jay says it's a fact. God hates polka.
Yes.
So here's the saint that you mentioned earlier. And Jay also mentioned this is Vitus, which because they banned the music, they ignored it. It was decided that the dancers should be taken to the nearby shrine dedicated to this gentleman, this saint here. At the time, Saint Vitus was seen as a rather vengeful saint who was known to throw down a dancing curse on those who disappeared or displeased him. So maybe they displeased him and he threw down a curse that we're trying to settle him down, maybe.
Yeah.
Each dancer was forced into a pair of red shoes for reasons unknown and made to dance around the saint's effigy in a nearby grotto. Finally, after several days of this, people stopped dancing. The plague was over, but what on earth caused it? And this was like the last time anyone really heard of this thing. There was no more dance. This was the last. This was like one of the craziest outbreaks, and the last outbreaks, which is interesting. So, like you said, at the time, it was a religious society. Most unfortunate events such as floods, famine, and plagues are explained away acts of divine intervention. So, I mean, it makes sense if they thought that God did this back then, but
it was a mostly peaceful dance-off, from my understanding.
It was. Yeah. One of the theories, and we've talked about this earlier, was maybe the phenomenon was a mass food poisoning, like in the river.
Right.
Rye was a staple cereal of the region where most of the dancing outbreaks occurred. So rye, if consumed in a significant volume, it can have strong hallucinogens effects, no dissimilar to LSD. So maybe they're all high.
Yeah, that could be the ergot poisoning they're talking about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So maybe they were. Maybe they were just like, oh my gosh, I got ants in my pants, so I have to dance.
Well, they could stop you from doing witchcraft, which wasn't a real thing. So you'd think they could stop you from dancing if they really put their minds to it.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh yeah, some of the artwork of some of these dances, I didn't realize how many artworks and paintings of this plague was out there. It's pretty amazing. Down here,
it might be a lambada thing, right, Jay? It could be a lambada.
Oh yeah. I like how Jay's just bringing in the Electric Boogaloo. Remember that movie? Breaking 2. The most plausible explanation is that possibly caused by a form of mass hysteria. The people of the region already had it in their heads that God was displeased with them, and that made them even more open to suggestion. These were people who had just come through several terrible years of disease and starvation and left them highly stressed. So, seeing other people dance and being told by those in charge they were doing it because God wasn't happy with them could have led to others to join in for fear of not doing so. This makes sense.
That does, yeah.
A lot of people did a lot of things 4 years ago that they thought they should have done out of fear, right? Before long, 400 people were all suffering from whatever this was. And collective madness spread through the population, causing the dance until they collapsed.
Like how you had to burn a target for social justice, right?
Yeah.
Same idea.
Yeah. Life would gradually get better for the people of the region. Outbreaks of mass dancing would die out completely in Europe by the 17th century. The dancing plague of 1518 was one of the many such outbreaks that occurred for centuries and remains one of the strangest in history. So
it's fascinating because, like, when I heard about this for the first time, I thought it was made up. It's not. Like,
it's not.
It's hard to wrap your head around that this was a real thing that happened, but it was.
Yeah, and it could have been, who knows? It could, like I said, there could have been something in the food. Could have been people saw this one person dancing, freaking out, so everyone followed along and thought, if I don't do this, I might get thrown out with the wolves. So
yeah, and they could have been playing "Trans People Are My Friends," and that's an earworm song. And how do you not move when that song comes on?
I don't
know.
You know what? All those pictures reminds me of that music video, the safety dance. You remember the safety dance?
Oh yeah, the safety dance. Yes.
How come it's not happening in modern times? That's the great question of this plague.
Yeah.
So, but
well, Jay knows this stuff. So Jay, why isn't it happening still? Or it has? Okay.
It has. Where? I would love you. Go ahead and share that with me. I don't know if you're on Twitter, you can share that with me. I would love to follow up on this and kind of look into if it does still happen today. But there you go. That's the dancing plague of 1518. Pretty wild.